Hey there, friends and enemies, Jopi here again, and today I want to talk about whether or not the live service bubble is fully about to burst, as there are many games seemingly struggling right now. And I don't know if a lot of these issues are fixable over the long haul, or if there's just such an oversaturation of the market that games that can't produce infinite content will ultimately fall by the wayside over time. And this is something that's very unfortunate for me, as I play a lot of these games, or have played a lot of these games, and even the non-live service games that produce ongoing content seem to be struggling to retain players. And I think that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, it doesn't matter if you are a player and you're enjoying your time with the game, because you can still have fun with it. But ultimately, where it would matter is if there's unfortunately layoffs at a studio, or they start producing less content, or they move on from a game entirely. And that's the concern that I think I have and a lot of other people would have with these live service games. For example, Helldivers 2 I think is a resounding success overall, but in its current state, you can see here videos on Helldivers 2 falling apart, the Helldivers 2 community is calling it quits. Now, this is an interesting game in general. I played a ton of Helldivers 2 initially, and it's one of those games where it wasn't necessarily prepared to have the success that it did. The studio didn't have enough staff, and so as they've ramped up, it's felt like they've tried to be more and more ambitious to satisfy the general population that's playing the game, and unfortunately they've gone too far in certain directions. They've been unable to keep up with the performance issues that have been popping up over time as they introduce more and more stuff to the game. And so because of that, I think it has led to a point where I believe a Helldivers 3 would fix a lot of these issues. I've said the same about Destiny 3 in the past, and that's not to say it's a cure-all. And one of the major problems with doing another entry, a new title for the franchise, is always going to be having enough content at launch to satisfy the players who are going to eat it up instantly. We're seeing that with Borderlands 4, right? The major issue with that, again, even though it's not live service, is the end game and the repeatable content to keep players engaged. And so because of that, I think we're seeing a different time right now than we have in the past. Whereas before, players would have a main game and they would just play it endlessly. Borderlands 2, for example, they would just farm the same bosses over and over and over again and be perfectly content doing so. Nowadays, there's so many options on the market that it does feel like a lot of times players will play what they want, they'll move on, and they're not as likely to come back as I think most. So I'm somebody that if a game that I like playing drops some fun new content, I'm jumping back in. But a lot of players, once it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and they stop playing it and they won't come back. And I think that's one of the major issues, is that these games are trying to keep players over the long haul, but once they lose them, they're finding it difficult to bring them back. And I do think that is something that we're seeing, not only with games like Helldivers 2. I've mentioned it in the past about The First Descendant. I think they had some things go right, but then they leaned very much in the direction of a Gunner game, and it's just really not hit for me since, even though I think some of the new content they've released has been pretty fun. At the end of the day, I think they don't do enough to really rope people back in, and it's going to be one of those games that's going to continue to struggle, I believe, to make the amount of money necessary to fund that game over the long term. Destiny 2, again, in a very similar mode. They tried a bunch of things with the Edge of Fate. It has not worked. And at the end of the day, they're just not releasing enough content for the players who want to jump in and have a variety of end game stuff to do, to really test out builds, enjoy the gameplay, all that kind of good stuff. So I think all these games are kind of indicative of the state of things. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see less live service games released over the long haul, especially because, like, if you release a hero shooter like Marvel Rivals and Overwatch, now you have two competitors in that space, and two competitors that have huge funding and a lot of resources to make future content, even though they don't hit on all of it all of the time. You look at the Battle Royale space, you've got Warzone really struggling, but we're about to have a supposedly Battlefield 6 BR in the next coming weeks, maybe. So add that to Fortnite, which always has insane player population, even though people talk about it in a negative way. And again, Apex Legends rising and falling throughout the time. That's a game that's been basically dead at times, risen from the ashes, and then died off once again. So I've been around live service games long enough. I've been here since day one of Destiny 1 to see the fact that this is not uncommon for games to go through low periods and high periods. But it's just strange to me that we're seeing so many of these games hit these low periods at the same time. And again, I think some people would blame TikTok brain. I know that's a thing that with the younger generations, they lose interest very easily. They move on very quickly. Whereas older players, typically, when they find something they really enjoy, will stick with it. But I think it's more than that as well. I think there's a combination of players moving on very quickly. We've got others who are testing out every single live service game as they come out, so they jump from game to game to game, and there's so many different options at any given time. Like over this last weekend, not only did we just have Battlefield 6 release, but we also had the playtest for Arc Raiders, which had huge numbers. And that's another game that I've seen people saying that Marathon is doomed to fail because it's releasing 4 to 6 months after Arc Raiders. We don't know where Arc Raiders is going to stand at that point. It could be an initial boom and then fall off sharply as players do everything there is to do. It could last the test of time and be an anomaly right now, but it's so hard to say. And it's just such a weird space to be in as somebody who not only plays a lot of these games, makes content on these games, but also genuinely enjoys. Like, I still have fun every time I jump back in to Helldivers 2, to Destiny 2, and those kind of games. And then once I get bored with them, I do put them down, play something else. But not having a main game does feel kind of weird. I had assumed Borderlands 4 would be that. Again, it's not live service, but they have so many content updates. Like, we're getting this week a Halloween event. Same thing for Destiny 2. And so I'll check those out and see if they're any good. But it's just such a funny space because there isn't one game dominating the market right now. Games will come in and be popular for a little bit and then fall off. People will point to player counts and be like, oh, this game lost 90% of its player base in the first whatever year or so. And I think that's just going to be the new norm. I think that's just the way things are going to go in the future. And it's wild to watch because, like, I think studios have to prepare themselves for that. And that's not to say they release all their content initially and then that's it at the end of the day. But there's got to be a way to understand how the market is working right now and provide content accordingly. I feel like, personally, smaller updates are sometimes necessary to keep the current players engaged, but there are never going to be enough to bring the big player bases back. So this is where we see with Destiny, where they have these 2 smaller DLCs along with 2 like free updates that are solid but not spectacular. It's not enough to get people excited. The biggest spikes in Destiny history are always going to be those major expansions, and I just don't know if we're going to see those going forward. And I think that's going to continue to drop the player base for Destiny 2 specifically. Now, could a game come along and change all of that? Would, like, the Division 3, a Destiny 3, a Helldivers 3 come along and completely adjust our expectations because it delivers on everything we want? Potentially. But I think we've seen so many games over the last few years rise and fall that I'm just not necessarily convinced that the public is looking for the next big live service game. I do think we almost need a break, like a year off from live service games where there aren't any new ones, so people can remember what it's like before live service and before we had all these games rolling out over the course of time, and also so that way these games could potentially stockpile content. I think a year or two off of Destiny 2, everyone calls for Destiny 3. I would love to see that, but if that's not realistic, a year break to allow them to accumulate content and really start to innovate more, I think would be the way to go with that game. Helldivers 2, a longer break to provide some really big updates to completely, first of all, fix the major performance problems that people are having, make sure the game is as stable as possible, and then deliver on some big, huge content that people are asking for. And I do feel like the smaller updates just unfortunately are a thing of the past. Live service in general really struggling right now, and some of these games just are not going to recover, unfortunately, in a meaningful way. Some of them will continue to produce content over the long term, but they're just not going to have enough funding. They're going to produce less and less content over time. They're either going to move developers onto other projects. They're gonna have to fire developers. It's gonna be really bad, and I think it's gonna happen in the near future. Unfortunately, let me know what you guys think. Are you still playing live service games? Like I said, on my system, I still have a bunch of them that I am rotating in when I get a chance. Again, I play Marvel Rivals, Destiny 2, Helldivers 2. I play a lot of these different games. I play games that are not live service, like Borderlands 4, like Helldiver, or like Space Marine 2 as well, that do provide ongoing content. And I think all of them are fixing the same issues. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like the video as always. Comment, subscribe, have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.